Welcome to Sex Talk Radio, a podcast that explores kink and sex through candid and curious conversations. Join me and expert guests in exploring taboos and unpacking what it means to be sex and kink positive.
Herpes gave me permission to actually really explore my sexuality because I came from that Catholic upbringing of sex is sacred and I'm only going to share it with certain men. I was like, fuck it, I got the slut virus now. Let's go, baby. And it kind of gave me this permission slip to explore whatever I wanted because I felt like, well, I don't need to save this because it's not saved anymore. It's been ruined. It's been taken from me.
I want to issue a trigger warning for this episode. This episode includes one or more of the following themes: rape, sexual assault, self-harm, and suicide. Today's episode of Sex Talk Radio is sponsored by the HUD app. HUD is changing the face of casual dating by offering an alternative and empowered approach to commitment-free dating. Go to hudapp.com/sextalk, that's hudapp.com/SEGGS talk for a week on me. A quick note, the HUD app is available on both iOS and Android and is available to users 18 and over. I'm so excited to introduce you guys to Butter. Butter Wellness makes external prostate massagers for men. They're extremely high-powered, no insertion necessary, and they give really incredible prostate orgasms. You can get 20% off by going to butterwellness.com and use code SEX, SEGGS. Hi again.
Hello.
Welcome to Austin.
Thank you.
What were your past experiences like here? You came to see same friend?
Yeah, well, I've come for training with my mentors. So each time I've come has been specifically for that.
Okay.
But this time that I've come, I feel that maybe I'm going to stay in Austin for a little while. So I've come a little bit more open to like, oh, what would it be like for Beck to live in America?
Wow.
Whereas the other two times it was coming and going. So it was different energy.
For what kind of mentor?
So personal development, spiritual growth, business development, relational development.
Cool.
Basically, the training that I did 8 years ago, learning how to facilitate that to support humans to live bigger lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
A lot of good spiritual energy in Austin for sure. So where are you from?
Perth, Western Australia originally, but I've been living in Bali for the past year and a half.
Okay. How's that been going?
So amazing.
Yeah.
Except Bali, have you been to Indonesia?
I have been to Thailand.
Okay,
but
so similar and different. The energy of Bali will very much welcome you in or kick you out. And since I was 15, like I've been to Bali 65 times.
What?
Yeah, because it's like 3.5 hours away from Perth.
Okay.
So it's actually.
Did your parents grow up taking you there? Or
I think one of our family holidays when I was 15 was there, but then after that, it's just
you.
Like, you can get on a plane for 200 Australian dollars, which is nothing in USD.
Right.
And go to a holiday like this exotic, luxurious, beautiful, affordable, like tranquil destination that's 3.5 hours flight away. It's amazing.
Wow. It's so on my list. But 65 times.
65 times. Epic. I had a business there at one stage, an activewear. But anyway, the island kicked me off.
Wow.
Like just before I came to America, energetically it was like, it's time to go.
Sure.
And so my time in Bali is done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Places have a way of doing that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like fresh starts though, or like new energy.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what America brings me.
Cool. So you're really open.
Yeah, so open.
And your business is 100% virtual.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a limiting belief that I can't run the Australian leg of my business in America, but I know that I've just shifted my entire calendar because we're literally back to back.
God, the time zones?
Yes. So right now, everyone in Bali and Perth is sleeping. It's like midnight. So all my clients will be at all different times, but I've decided I'm going to debunk this little myth in my head that says that I have to start from scratch and just flip my calendar around.
It's just about working some weird hours and sucking up that part of it. Like I'm having my website redone by my friend Katie, who's in Australia, and it's like she'll ping me on WhatsApp at 10 p.m. I'm like in bed. I'm like, okay, let me go look really quick. Like then first thing in the morning, we might be online at the same time.
Yeah, I have a team member in London, a team member in Bali, a team member in Perth. So I'm like, wow, I'm just going to text you when I'm awake and I feel good because I'm not going to be on my phone 24 hours.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. So no end date for Austin? Are you a
Well, I think for the first visa,
stuff. Yeah.
90 days is as long as I can stay before I'm like deported or arrested.
Oh, Jesus.
But I had to come back in July anyway. So I've just decided it's probably going to be more challenging, and there's more, but challenging in a good way if I was to stay rather than leave.
Yes.
If I go back to Bali, I know what I'm going to get there. I've done it all.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Limitations. Well, you and I had a really awesome prep call for this episode. I've been thinking a lot about it.
Yeah.
Specifically in terms of sexual wellness between countries. And I've been thinking a lot about what you said in terms of how different it is almost everywhere else.
Yes.
As compared to America.
Yeah.
But I guess before we jump into that, could you tell me a little bit of your story and your relationship with sexuality and wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously my name is Bek Antonucci, and my relationship with sexuality and sexual wellness, I went to a Catholic all-girls school, and I have very prudish parents where I thought sex was a swear word up until the age of 14.
Wow.
Like we weren't allowed to swear in my household.
Sure.
So I thought that sex was a naughty word like everything else.
Yeah.
So I feel like I lived a very sheltered life when it comes to being taught about sex. My mum gave me a picture book to learn about sex as a little girl when I asked about it.
People keep saying that they got some book.
Yeah, I got a picture book, and when he's orgasming, it's like Daddy freezes, and it's so
That's creepy.
Really weird.
Daddy.
Really weird. That's like the only part of the book that I remember where I'm like, what's Dad doing when his body is freezing up? Yeah, and little like pictures of fish looking sperm, tadpole things.
Right.
Just not great education. And the same when it comes to sexual health in high school. I actually don't remember that conversation being had with us. So I didn't know what sexual health was. I didn't know what STIs were. And I thought, I was very reserved when it came to men and very selective. I had a huge trust issue show up with men when my first partner assaulted me. So to sleep with someone took a lot of time, a lot of rapport, months and months and months before that would actually happen because I was terrified of trusting men. So I just thought not sleeping with a lot of people would make sure that I was marked safe from STIs.
Sure.
So when it landed on my path at age 25, I'd only slept with a small handful of men. And that doesn't mean anything whether you slept with a lot, whether you slept with one person. I was just like, when I went into the doctor's office and she said, let's do a sexual health check, I was like, no, thank you.
I haven't had much of that.
I don't need that. I only sleep with boyfriends. And the man who passed it to me, he promised me he'd had a sexual health check the week prior. So I was very much believing that there's no way that this could be a sexual health condition.
Sure.
And so when I walked into the doctor's office and she did an internal examination, she then sat down with me, printed out an A4 sheet of paper, handed it to me, and she said, oh, honey, you have herpes. And in that moment, I just realized I don't know what herpes is. I've never had a sexual health check before I'm 25. And I had no education, no information, nothing to register except for the stigma, which is bad jokes in movies, bad jokes in rom-coms, the
many
bad
bad jokes.
so many bad jokes.
And always this word dirty, always like this distinction of clean, dirty, good, bad, which is so abrasive for a young woman.
Yeah, it's very violent communication and with no evidence to essentially substantiate what we're actually believing. Like in that moment, I'm like, my sex life is ruined. No man will choose me. I'll never be loved now. I'm ruined. I've ruined my life. I have no knowledge of what herpes is.
And those are such big things to make up about yourself.
Huge. And I really, and the people who engage with me share the same.
Right.
I really believed it in that moment. Life is over. Life as I know it, and life as I knew it was over, but for the better. I just didn't know it at the time. I was so convinced that sex was off the table for me forever.
Wow.
And that's the thing. When I started to reflect, there was no information given to me previously. I looked at the doctor like, great, thanks. Can you please give me the injection or the antibiotic so I can get rid of this thing? And then when she says this is a lifelong STI, the stress, the shock, the trauma. It's called acute trauma. Acute trauma is like a car accident. It happens hard and fast.
Oof.
That's what a surprise shock STI diagnosis is, when you don't know it's coming and a doctor is sitting there saying you have something for life and you didn't know it was on its way. Boom. So painful to go through.
Yeah, I cannot imagine. And our system, neither there nor here in the States, is set up to give any education. It's completely fear-based is what I've realized, the education. I got a little bit in middle school and high school, but I don't think they separated the boys and the girls, which I think that they should at that age, because it's too many sex jokes and giggling. And it was all of us just in a classroom. And so it was like everyone was, all the guys were laughing. And then the main exercise they had us do was this glitter spreading, showing how rapidly an STI spreads.
Oh, wow.
From a fear perspective. If you don't use condoms, and just in general, look at how the STIs can spread around the classroom. And it's if that's your only concept for sex, you're going to be terrified.
Yes, it is. Just like you said, very fear-based. Yeah. So people are carrying that from the moment in which they're diagnosed. They're carrying that fear in their body of Thea won't accept me if she knew this thing about me. She would never have me sit here. She would hate me. She would be disgusted by me if only she knew the truth. And this is people are living with that in their bodies every single day. And I just feel like society, mental health is rising and we're talking about it, but people are carrying these deep acute traumas in their body like a shock diagnosis, and they don't know how to navigate it because it's so fear-based.
Yes.
And what I believe it's directly tied to is fear of being isolated from the pack. We all have a core human need to belong, and an STI feels like it rips it from us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Something I was just chatting with someone about is also the distinction between men and women, how often sexual health and wellness falls on the responsibility of the woman.
Yes.
To they're getting the testing and reporting back to their partner. Yes. Somebody shared with me the guy goes, "Oh, well, I'm fine since you just got tested."
Yes.
And so there's a lot of the societal pressure.
Yes.
On women, and women doing a lot of the getting tested, meaning more women are going to be STI positive, not actually, but just because they've actually gotten tested and diagnosed.
Yes.
And, without generalizing too much, I think that that's definitely harmful for women.
Yeah, well, to full circle your original question in terms of my relationship with my sexuality, herpes gave me permission to actually really explore my sexuality, because I came from that Catholic upbringing of sex is sacred and I'm only going to share it with certain men. I was like, fuck it, I got the slut virus now. Let's go, baby. And it kind of gave me this permission slip to explore whatever I wanted, because I felt like, well, I don't need to save this because it's not saved anymore. It's been ruined. It's been taken from me. But I actually love
mixed.
I love that I got to take that back.
Right.
And I was single for 7 years prior to my last partner. Mm-hmm. And I was reflecting that in those 7 years, only one person had a sexual health conversation with me. One. And that was after, because he received a phone call from a woman saying, please go and get tested. I found out that I have something. So then he called me and said, I think you should go and get tested. This woman that I've slept with has called me. And it was all fine, and it doesn't matter if it wasn't. I would be totally okay. But in reflection, even now, I've been single in Bali and living it up for a year and a half.
Good.
I talk about herpes on the internet.
Right.
And I've still not had a sexual health conversation unless I bring it up. I'm like, does anyone actually want to talk about it?
Wow.
And so I feel people are just terrified to just say, hey, before we go here, let's just have a sexual health conversation. When was the last time you were tested?
Right.
Don't you think that's crazy?
In 7 years. That's
originally 7 years of single partner, then another year and a half. That's 8.5 years of me being single and free.
Yeah.
One conversation after the fact, and then the past year and a half is just me initiating.
Which can probably be exhausting. No?
I mean,
or
I feel it's like I know now that I'm meant to have it because I have herpes.
Sure.
And so prior I wouldn't have thought to have it, but it's just so important. And I think we think it's going to ruin how sexy the moment is, but it really doesn't. And so everyone's kind of like rolling around hoping like, luck of the draw, I hope I don't get anything until something happens. And then it's like, why didn't I say something?
Or not getting tested, and unless there are active outbreaks or symptoms, being like, I'm fine. I don't need to look into that. I think that's another huge stigma with STIs is like, well, nothing's out of the ordinary down there. Like, I'm fine.
Yeah, and a lot of things are symptomless.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one of my European girlfriends from Bali, I turned to her, I was like, I think I need to go and get a sexual health check. Just, I should start getting them every 6 months. I'm single now.
Totally.
And she's from Barcelona. And she turned to me, she's like, baby, do you want me to go with you? I was like, I'm not scared. She's like, you need to go every 6 months. And her girlfriends have been doing a regular STI check together since they were 16. Now, where she's from, apparently they have the highest rates of a certain sexual health condition.
Okay.
And she turned to me and said, it's only because we test for it. Whereas you guys in Australia over there, you're all living ignorant, like, I'll get tested when I need to.
Hope
like
it works out, yeah.
I hope nothing happens.
Right.
And so I do feel that we're really not looking after ourselves as well as we really could if we took our responsibility back.
Yeah. And oftentimes, at least in the States, you really have to advocate for testing. So like there are a lot of other STIs that I've been learning about. Like there's trick, and then you mentioned one similar to yeast infection. I don't know. There's all of these other things. And in the States, we just test for gonorrhea and chlamydia. Like that's it.
Right.
And for HSV1 or 2, you have to kind of beg, and you have to beg for like a blood test, and it's a whole thing.
I have a little trick to that.
Okay.
I tell all my clients when the doctor is like, no, you just need to have a symptom before you test.
Right.
I tell them, tell your doctor that someone that you've slept with has called you and told you that they've just had an active recent outbreak and they want you to go and get tested. Yeah. And then the doctor will do it. Just lie. Just lie.
No, saying you've been exposed. I mean, it shouldn't be hard to get an HSV1 and 2 test. And what I just did most recently, which I actually really loved, was instead of going in, I just ordered a comprehensive test online that had everything. And then I went in and got my blood drawn like at a lab. But it's $200.
Yeah.
So it's like.
I had a health scare in Bali. It was $500. I went to 3 different doctors, $500 a pop. And I just felt I'm in the position where I can pay that. But I felt for a lot of young women, especially on the island of Indonesia.
Sure.
They would be in terror and fear and pain, in shock and shame, and not being able to go because for a backpacker, $500 is $500.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I grew up, my mom's a public health nurse. I grew up learning a lot about like how things spread and just taking care of your body.
Yes.
And I feel like there's a huge, huge gap. So it's important we're having conversations like this.
Yeah, I love it.
So tell me more about what the work you do now with women.
So I call myself a confidence coach, an emotional wellbeing coach. I'm not really attached to what people call me, but I really support women to create a deep felt sense of inner safety from within so that they feel courageous enough to be themselves in this world.
Yeah.
I feel like in life we're outsourcing our power to everything. The herpes virus took my power away. The partner that gave it to me took my power away.
Sure.
So we're doing work for that woman to reclaim her power back, dissolve the shame that is
so
attached.
important.
So important.
Yeah.
Dissolve the shame that's attached to anything that has happened to her, the situations, circumstances, relationships, so that she can really start to live her life authentically and bravely and really commit to her own soul-led path.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
When women come to you in the DMs or email, like where are they at in their journey or their diagnosis? Is it the beginning often?
Really different. I prefer to work with women who are quite far along in their journey because they're at the point of knowing, okay, living with this is livable, but now it's my thoughts attached to it.
Sure.
Whereas the initial stages of the diagnosis, there is, I believe, a personal process that you have to go through where you are grieving the past version of you who was STI free. Learning, like when I walked into the doctor's office, I had the first outbreak and I don't really get outbreaks now. It's so manageable for me naturally. Yeah. The first outbreak is the worst outbreak. So the biggest fear was, is this going to be my experience of my pussy forever?
Sure. Every month or what's going to happen?
Constantly, chronically? Does it go away? Monthly? Like, I can't live like this.
Yeah.
And then it does go away. And so then I'm starting to learn, I'm living with this, the thoughts of having the virus in my mind, that's constantly there, but it's not anywhere else on the body.
Sure.
And I feel for women that come to me once they've learned like, well, herpes really isn't here. Maybe if I'm stressed, maybe if I haven't slept, maybe if I'm overworked, it'll show. You know, stress is the biggest trigger of an outbreak. But beyond that, unless you have a chronic health condition, it's very, very much livable. And so for the woman, she gets to go through that entire process and then be like, okay, living with herpes actually physically isn't hard, but emotionally it's incredibly challenging. That's when she's ready to work with me.
Totally. What resources would you suggest for somebody that is just diagnosed or has an outbreak, therapy, doctor?
I mean, I have an entire podcast where I have, because I got the kind of sick of the same questions, like what are the transmission rates and can I use condoms? Any question about pregnancy, reclaiming your sensuality back, reclaiming your pleasure, herpes from a man's perspective, dating with herpes, how to date.
She's covered it.
I have covered everything that I needed from, and I really wanted a beautiful woman to be the voice for me, so it felt relatable. Yeah. Everything that I needed a beautiful woman to say for me to make me feel okay for my pain, I've put it all in there. And so many thousands of women worldwide are saying that they're listening to the podcast and receiving their own breakthroughs, dating with confidence, disclosing with confidence, teaching women how to disclose. Because let's talk about it. People sleep with people and don't tell them the truth.
Sure.
It happens. But a lot of people then experience guilt after the fact of like, oh, I just slept with Thea. I really liked her. And then because we're friends, I didn't tell her. And then I didn't know it was going to happen. Now I've slept with her. And now because I need to tell her, like, then they want the information of how do I disclose after I haven't disclosed. So I've even got a podcast on that. Like everything everything you need is there, because every mistake that you could possibly make, guaranteed I've probably made it too.
What's your podcast called?
Raw, Real and Vulnerable.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a grieving process. And that's what I've heard over and over from people is whether it's HSV1 or 2 down south, that it's the first one is like painful and memorable and awful. I had genital warts one time. It wasn't HSV2, but it was like, there were these white warts. I don't even totally know, but I got it treated and it was very awful pain-wise. It was like hurt to walk and like some hurt to pee, like some of those things that I've heard people share, but it was just the one time. And it can be really scary to imagine that would happen every month or every year. You shared with me a pretty epic disclosure series that you have, with the last one being HSV, and I would love for you to walk us through that, because it's changed my mind about how I want to talk about sex.
I was feeling into my time in Bali and what was making me feel good intimately and not. And I realized I'm disclosing about herpes because that is really important to me, that I'm in my truth and my integrity. But there's things that I need to know as well to feel really good about this sexual experience. Sure. So the way that I've been disclosing to men is, number one, I'll share with him, I'm only attracted to men who experience pleasure from the pleasuring of the woman. Yeah. And if you're not here for that, that's okay, but I won't be available for it.
Like making sure they get off on you in your pleasure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think you can teach that. I can't force you to experience pleasure from pleasuring me. I don't want you to do it from your little boy that just wants to make sure I had a good time. I want to know that you're like really there for it.
Love it.
So that's part one. Yeah. Part two is I feel incredibly disrespected when a man doesn't take his time with me. So that's number two.
To ensure that you come.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be a rushed experience. It just take your time with me, take your time with this sexual experience. Otherwise, I'm not available for it. I have some beautiful crystal pleasure wands that I can go to town with in 30 minutes myself.
Well, and you feel kind of used when it's like the person gets off and then you feel like the experience is done. Yeah. That has happened a lot more than I wish it had.
Yeah, and especially sometimes men that appear very confident. I'd noticed in my 8.5 years of singledom, they talked a big game, and then when it came to the moment, it didn't really happen that way. So I thought, what could I have communicated in advance to let him know what I'm available for? Part three is, if you do not have sexual stamina, then my request is that you make sure that I experience pleasure before you prioritize your own. Because I had this man in Bali and he was incredible. He's this footballer, ex-professional footballer from Holland. Sexy. We met out in the wild, which is not online, which I like the most.
That's where the most physical attraction is found, I find. Because it starts with this
Yeah, we had this moment where I was getting on my scooter. He was at my favorite restaurant. We locked eyes. I was like, we had this 3-hour impromptu date, and then one thing led to another.
You locked eyes and then started chatting right there?
He was there, yeah.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, he's gorgeous, dark features, chiseled jaw, just held himself beautifully, dressed really nicely. We're in Bali.
Was he living there as well? Or?
He was on I think he was on a traveling, a lot of entrepreneurs go to Bali to have their downtime. So I feel like that was what he was doing for himself. And in terms of skill set, he was unbelievably amazing. But he lasted 7 or 8 minutes to begin with, didn't prioritize my pleasure at all. And then when it was done, I was angry.
Yeah.
I was
You're like, wait, what just happened?
bro, you're 44 years old. Have you not figured out that that's not what you do?
Yeah.
And we had this communication barrier of he spoke perfect English, but his jokes and my jokes didn't match.
Oh, God.
And so for the next 40 minutes, he hasn't left my house yet. I'm like, what are you still doing here? And he's making jokes about his performance. And I was like, no, it's actually incredibly disrespectful that you did that. Anyway, he came good 40 minutes later, had amazing sex. But after that, I was just
He did what 40 minutes later? You had
we went
sex
again.
Okay.
And he was ready to go all night. And I was just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And after about 30 minutes, I was like, you know what? As good as this is, I feel really complete because of what happened in that first 7 minutes. And he was kind of in this like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And I just felt so disrespected from round one that round two, just no matter how good you are and what you're doing now,
You're preoccupied.
You've kind of ruined it for me. So that made me realize I just have to communicate that from the outset. So that would be my third part. If you don't have sexual stamina, my request is that you prioritize my pleasure before you prioritize your own. If you know that you're going to last 8 minutes at the 7-minute 50, you stop and we do something different.
Yeah.
And
they know when it's about to happen.
Yeah. And it doesn't actually matter to me how long you take. It's just that you prioritize the experience before that happens. And then the final part is obviously and it's important that you know that I have herpes. So that's my 4 pieces to know that we're both feeling good about the next step.
Absolutely. And I love that you put the disclosure of the STI at the end because it's much bigger than that.
Yeah.
The request that you have for your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me now, carrying the herpes virus isn't a big deal for me. And if someone is available for it, amazing. And if someone is not, then amazing as well. I would like the choice to choose. I would have loved that. And so if someone's not there for it, that's just, they're not available. So that I'm okay with that.
And it doesn't have to be a thing.
It's not, it actually isn't. You know, all my disclosures have been so incredible.
Wow.
And I usually attract men that are like, babe, it's not a big deal, or I so appreciate you being so honest with me. I have so much respect for you, or me too. I've had one disclosure. It happened in Bali where I met a man out.
Yeah.
He came back to my home. Everything got hot and heavy. I didn't expect it. And I was like, I've got a 4-part disclosure piece. And I usually say, don't do it as you're just about to have sex because.
Sure. Yeah. It's different mindset when you're aroused.
Yeah. It's a different mindset when you're aroused. You know, you don't want to. I'm okay. If you stood up and said, I'm not good for this, emotionally, I'm totally okay for it. A lot of women, they're feeling very vulnerable in that moment.
Rejected.
And men.
Yeah.
And so it's going to bring up a lot of rejection and all the things. So everything's happening. I didn't realize it was going to get to there. He's got his hands wrapped around my wrists. I'm mounting him like, I need to say some things before this goes any further. And so I tell him he's like, 4 things? I was like, 4 things. And then at the end of it, he goes, okay, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Yeah, I'm a yes to. I was like, great. He's like, part 4, I don't know anything about. And so we got to have a really beautiful conversation. I could feel a little bit of resistance from him.
Right.
And so I shared, I can feel a little bit of hesitation from you. So I would prefer this not go any further because if I know if you're not fully present, I'm not going to be able to receive and enjoy this.
Yeah.
So let's just park it, do dinner. He was like, maybe I should do some research. I was like, yeah, go do some research.
Because I'm not going to be mommy and educate you here.
No, I don't want to. It's not a turn on for me at all to sit there and tell you all the things. So go and do what you need to do. I need to know that you're fully available for it for me to be fully available for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get it. Yes. Yeah. You're so good. Going back to the lasting thing, I find that when it's full on penetration, sex, fucking, I find a lot of guys don't last longer than 7 to 8 minutes.
Yeah.
What I like my biggest turn on is when somebody can do multiple rounds. We're just in bed all day, just a ton of rounds.
Yes.
Regardless of how long they last. But I think that men have a lot of shame and insecurity around how long they last. Often what I find is that they feel like they're never in the sweet spot, whatever that magical number is. Yeah. They think that if I come in 5 minutes, that's not long. If it's 25 minutes, it's too long. They can get really in their heads about it. But at the same time, what you were saying, men know how long they last because it's pretty fucking consistent.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so powerful to ask for that. Because I can only come from toys, I now, and it took a lot of practice for the ladies listening and watching, it took a lot of practice saying it and doing it. But now I'm like, hey, I come from a toy. I would like to come first. I would like to see you hard while I'm making myself come because that turns me on. Like you after an orgasm, flaccid laying next to me is not going to get me there. And so this is what I like. And like, I feel like women can often be scared of maybe coming across as like too dominant or something. But it's the hottest thing you can do for yourself is advocate for your pleasure.
What was your journey to building the confidence to being able to say that to
Practice. Just practice.
Yeah.
But it took probably multiple years of getting it to kind of like your 4-part disclosure. It took it many years of getting it so succinct.
Yes.
Because I think I would often make it a story of like pity for myself, kind of like maybe it was for STI disclosure of like, well, like, you know, unfortunately I can only come from toys. And so this is what I like a little bit more.
Almost like your pleasure is a burden to them.
Yes,
versus
burden. That's a good word.
This man gets to experience this beautiful woman in her pleasure in probably a way that most men are asking their partners, can I watch you orgasm through your toys?
Right.
And women are experiencing shame about experiencing that. And you're like, this is what I need.
They fucking love to watch it.
Yes.
They love to watch it.
I can imagine.
They love to watch.
Yeah.
And it was me in my head.
Yeah.
Thinking I was a burden. And something that I realized that I enjoyed to help me get over the edge with an orgasm is I like people telling me to like take my time, be patient.
Yes.
We're not in a rush, like that kind of stuff. Because I also feel like for women, there's pressure to come fast because we're so conditioned that in general, overall, you're watching porn, whatever, however you're conditioned to see sex, the man coming is like the grand finale.
Yes. Many women that I have worked with, the shame that they hold, or some of it is how long it takes for them to orgasm. And a request that they have is for him to say, take your time. And
oh, wow, I'm not alone in this.
Yes.
Okay, I
because
love it.
As soon as he says it, and it's like how I say, you experience pleasure from the pleasuring of me. I need to know that you're not just saying that and that it's really felt. So she needs to hear from him, take your time, baby.
Right.
Take as long as you need. I'm here for it. And when he says it and she feels that he means it, her whole body can relax. Well, when she's relaxed, that's going to give the opportunity for it to occur.
Yes.
Versus the pressure of like, oh my God, he's down there so long. This is taking so long. Maybe the last woman he was with was quicker and sooner. And I can orgasm really easily. So then women that will share with me, I'm jealous of women that can orgasm so easily. And then I think eventually he's going to decide this is too hard and leave. So then they'll fake an orgasm.
Oh boy.
And then they'll come back to
creates a whole other
their girlfriends and say they're not enjoying sex. But he doesn't know because
he thinks he's making you come.
He thinks he's making you come. So he doesn't know that you take too long or not too long. He doesn't know that you take a long time to orgasm because you haven't communicated that because you experience shame.
Right.
He doesn't know to tell you to take your time. Now you're fake orgasming. So he thinks what he's doing
is working
in 15 minutes and it's not.
And then he's going to go do it to another girl and be confused when she's not coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think men are in their heads like this about sex?
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. I used to, my ex, we had very different desires intimately and sexually, but he wanted to please me. And so whenever we were going to have, an incredible sexual experience, he would be like, I'm just going to have a few beers first.
Oh.
And so I asked one of my male friends once, what is this a few beers before sex thing? I don't get it. And he wasn't drunk, but it just relaxed him. And my male friend reflected, men are so in their heads about if they're doing a good job, if you're liking it, if it's good enough, if they're lasting long enough, if he was as good as the man before you, you have a higher sex drive than your partner, you want more intimacy. So that's just bringing up, I'm not doing enough, she's going to leave me, this isn't good enough.
Wow.
Is it big enough? Is my dick big enough?
Oh, gosh, yes.
And so, I really, it creates, for me, I feel a lot of compassion for men that also experience this. And what I believe is there's just not enough honest communication between men and women of I really fear that I'm not doing a good enough job, or I really fear that I take too long to orgasm and I'm going to be a burden to you sexually. It's going to ruin the fun of this experience because that isn't spoken about. It's like all these elephants in the room that actually exist.
So many elephants.
No one's talking about, I have a herpes diagnosis I'm not going to talk about. Hope I never transmit it. That's like fingers crossed.
Yeah. Something else that is still, I think, probably a work in progress for me to communicate is like, and something that having guests on this podcast has helped me realize is that not everything has to end in an orgasm. Not every experience and every sexual encounter and play. And So what I'll find sometimes is like, I have the toy on me, I'm playing with someone, but then I actually don't feel like I need an orgasm to complete the experience. But then disclosing that, because for some reason it feels like, oh, I need to get to that climax to make the person feel better, which is really just kind of outsourcing the experience.
So have you told them that now?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Whereas I'm the opposite. I do. I'm like, I will not be stepping into this room without that thing happening.
Sure. Okay. There you go.
Boundary.
Most of the time I do. But there's just some times where like I've been at it for a while and I'm just like, I'm kind of tired. Like I'm good.
My ex had incredible longevity. So sometimes he'd be like, I'm complete. But morning sex, I love. He was not there for it. So he'd be there for it for me. And then once I'd had a good time, he was like, I'm done now. Really? Don't you leave incredibly frustrated for the rest of your day?
That can happen
That
too.
can happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was your initial experience with your diagnosis? And you were sharing a bit about how you felt like in some way it actually empowered you to be more sexually explorative. But what did those initial weeks or months look like? And did you have anybody to confide in?
So I confided in my best girlfriend at the time, and then I lied to her later. I was like, oh, no, it was just a UTI infection because I didn't want anyone to know. My biggest fear was anyone knowing this thing about me, and I feel no matter where you're from, everyone has this small town mentality. I thought in Perth, if once one person tells one person, all of Perth will know.
And you'll be labeled as this thing.
I'll be the herpes girl. And everyone will be like, don't go near her, she's got herpes. And no matter what client I work with, whether they're from a small town or from New York City, everyone's got this mentality. Once one person knows, everyone in this town is going to know.
Wow.
So I told my girlfriend, her name was Alex, I was like, oh, it's just a UTI. So the person that actually did know was the man that passed it to me. And because I was with him, he was my rebound boyfriend.
Yeah.
And so the first 5 days were incredibly traumatic. I don't take sleeping tablets. He gave me a Xanax and I was in so much emotional and physical pain. I literally slept my way through Xanax the entire way through that 5 days. All I could do was lie in a bath because it was just
nervous system
and literally the experience of my pussy. It was
you were in an outbreak
like tiny
as well.
Little cuts all over you internally. It was just excruciating.
Were you Googling during this time too?
Yes.
Because you didn't know anything?
Google is the most awful doctor. I even had a health scare recently. I'm like, don't get on Google Doctor. What's the first thing I did?
You're dying.
I went on Google Doctor. I'm like, I have cancer, I have a cyst, I have this, I have that. I'm like, it was an infected hair follicle. Thank you, God. But literally I did the worst thing that I tell people not to do, and it floods your body with even more stress and puts you in this
hormones.
Heightened state of dysregulation.
Sure.
So after that, I stayed with I was like, I'm going to stay with the rebound guy.
This is something I've heard. Another woman that I had on, it's very common to be like, well, I have to end up with this person.
Yeah. And he was like, I still love you. You're beautiful. I choose you. It's not a big deal because I want to be with you.
He better still love you. He gave it to you.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, and then in the back of my mind, I'm like, he trapped me. You did this to me intentionally so no one else could ever have me, and you've ruined my life. He was actually a really great guy. The only thing that wasn't great is that he didn't disclose.
He knew.
And he says that he did not.
But he probably never got tested.
And we all know in a routine STI check, like he got back from Thailand the week before, he did have a sexual health check, but we know that a routine STI check doesn't come with a herpes panel.
Nope.
So, but about a year later, I was cleaning, we had a shared apartment, I was cleaning our shared room, and I found a travel bag of his that had antivirals for herpes in it. For Valtrex from years ago. So I was like, you knew. You knew. He never got a symptom. Like the entire time we were together, no symptoms.
Right.
So I'm sure he was one of those people that thought symptom free.
Can't
had
spread
it for a long time. Doctors in Australia share incredibly terrible misinformation.
Oh, no.
They'll tell you, it's not on the notifiable infection list. I know it's different in America. So you don't have to tell. In Australia, by law, you do not have to disclose. The doctor will literally tell you no one has to know. And you don't need to tell anyone unless you have an outbreak. And the doctor will also tell you it's not transmittable unless you have an active outbreak.
Literally not true. That's also all of the comments I got. We had a viral clip with Brooke who was on talking about her vaginal HSV1 diagnosis and how the guy, what was it? He had a cold sore that wasn't visible and went down on her, and that's how she contracted it. Nobody saw a cold sore, but then everyone was commenting like, how did they not know? It's like he had one before it was visible and popped through, but he had it orally and transmitted it to her down there. But people had no idea. They were like, didn't he have a huge cold sore on his mouth? No, dude.
Well, they do say that 70% of herpes carriers are asymptomatic, which means you will carry the antibodies for the virus and never show a symptom, but you can still transmit.
Wow.
Yeah. And majority of my female clients who carry the herpes virus have received it from someone who carries herpes orally going down on them.
And is it true that women can contract it more easily vaginally?
They say it's a higher transmission rate, male to female than female to male.
I would think because of the like moisture down there, like, I don't know.
Like something actually going like up and inside us.
Yeah. Like we have a whole world down there. I was talking about the
really
vaginal microbiome earlier today. Like we have a whole world, whereas guys, it's like external. It's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can just imagine that things can transmit.
And I know people get really wrapped up in transmission rates, which I don't align with the ones that are online. And I do think it's really important, my personal opinion, just as a girlfriend, is that we can't convince people into sleeping with us because they say transmission rates are low. I don't believe they're as low as they say they are anyway.
Sure.
And if I'm like, hey, Theo, I'm really interested in you. And these, by the way, it's only a 4% chance because I'm on antivirals. I'm not. But say, for example, I was. And then you're like, okay, well, it's so low and I like you.
Right.
Imagine if we start dating and then you're on the receiving end of it and you end up with it. I feel the person needs to know that there's always a chance.
Definitely. Yeah. If you're trying to enroll and convince somebody to sleep with you, I mean, you deserve better anyways.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Yeah. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I've always felt a little mixed about disclosing HSV1 orally, but I now disclose it because I just find a lot of education happens on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, hey, have you ever had a cold sore? Yes, I have. Okay, you have HSV1.
Yeah.
What? I didn't know. Yeah, you do. Like, it's tiring. But somebody was going to come over. We had a very hot, like, sexy BDSM situation scene planned. A little anonymous vibes. And on the fucking way over, the drive over, are you clean?
Wow.
Which we'll talk about clean versus dirty in a bit because we need to talk about that as well. But like, and I go, I have HSV1. I haven't had a cold sore in 5 years. I feel like I even have to disclose, which I don't have to, but in that, like, this is that. HSV1 is cold sores because there's just such a lack of education here.
Yeah.
It sounds like it might be a little different in Australia. And he goes, oh, like, okay, give me a sec. I need to like think about this. And then he was like, I am really like paranoid about this kind of stuff. Like, I don't think I can do that. Yeah. And I've never experienced like in the moment direct rejection for it.
Yeah.
And I'll also just be super vulnerable that I haven't always disclosed it because I didn't think I had to. And it was hard.
I can imagine.
I was angry.
Yeah.
I was angry. And I think I sent him kind of a angry
What were you
message.
most angry about?
I was angry about the rejection.
Yeah.
And it was probably, some like, hurt inner child stuff, being told you're not good enough or not that I was as a kid, but just that wound. And I felt angry that he hadn't asked me that prior.
I was about to say, and also the way like context does it.
Like, here's my address, see you in 20 minutes. Wait, are you clean? We should have, if this is so important to you, if you're so paranoid about contracting STIs, that should be part of your initial plan.
What?
4-step plan.
Exactly. I know you're asking me why I was here. In the training that we do, one thing that we say is context determines the content. Like, he could have asked that question at the very beginning. Hey, before we have this sexy chat and plan this BDSM moment, I'd just like to know, when was the last time you've been tested? Do you know that you're positive for anything? Mm-hmm. That would be an entirely different
and would have saved a lot of time and energy. We've been chatting for a week.
Time, energy, feeling rejected. And then you could be like, hey, I'm so glad that you asked me that.
Right.
I test positive for HSV1. I carry it orally. I haven't had a cold sore in 5 years. And then he could be like, oh, let me think about this before it goes any further. Hey, I have sexual health paranoia, which a lot of people do. A lot of my clients who carry herpes, they're like, my biggest fear was getting herpes. And now I've got herpes. And their thing now is, I never wanted this and I would have never accepted someone with this. And now I'm literally disclosing to people hoping that they're going to accept the very thing that I was paranoid about. But if he had have done that from the get-go, it probably would have changed your feelings about the experience.
And it's not a turnoff, you guys, to bring it up. Like, especially people in the sex positive and in the kink space. You're mentioning that only a couple people have like disclosed to you. I found that people are pretty good about it on field.
Yes.
Have you used that at all here? Or?
I've used it in Bali.
Okay.
Yeah, where people are very much more open-minded on there.
Totally.
And they have to have more authentic conversations because to talk about our pleasure is vulnerable and authentic. So I feel people are much more versed in the entire sexual conversation, including sexual health.
Same. My thing lately is I've been like dabbling in vanilla dating. Like
vanilla dating.
Like people that don't have kinky experience.
Ooh.
And basically I'm dabbling and it's not working.
Okay.
I'm too kinky. I'm too far on this journey. And it's like
I'm too far gone now.
I'm too far gone.
I've left the vanilla people behind.
Too far gone. Like me trying to talk to a guy on Bumble and even explain like what a kink is.
Yes.
Like, what are your kinks? Like you like it rough? Like it's just, I can't have those conversations.
Yeah.
And so I like to say that I'm too kinky for Bumble and I'm too wanting a boyfriend for Field. So I'm like, I have nowhere to go. But
the wild.
Yeah, I know. I need to get out more. But yeah, it's not your job to be an educator.
Yeah.
About this world. There are people out there, and I found them mostly on Field, that are versed in consent conversations prior to doing anything, kinky, that are versed in STI disclosure. Some people have it on their profile, what they're positive for, and that's great.
Yeah. And it just can be so sexy. I mean, even I've used the dating apps more to get my word out because I know what it's like to be limited by social media based on the content that we share and how far and wide it can be spread. So I've always been on dating apps as well, just for the purpose of having my face there with, hey, I'm Beck and I have herpes. Yeah. Bumble, Hinge, Tinder. I did the whole thing just to give women permission of, hey, look how easy it can be. And
that's so fucking cool. That's very cool because you get nothing out of that. Like it's just, this is important and I want to change the world.
Yeah, I thought fish where the fish are. People are dating.
Yeah.
People need to know about herpes.
Go get tested.
You
might have it.
Here it is. Yeah. But I was in Sydney and I bumped into a man in an elevator and he was with his cousin and he looks at me. I was actually wearing this outfit.
It's hot.
Thank you. And he goes, nice outfit. He was with another woman. So I was like, what is going on?
Right.
I looked at him like, thanks. And she complimented me. So I was like, okay, this is an invitation, like they're a couple.
Yeah.
And it turns out she was his cousin. We go upstairs. He invites me to have a drink with them. In the end, I do. And when she leaves the table, because she had friends upstairs, he turns to me and is like, are you interested in spending the night together?
Wow.
And so I looked at him.
Daddy.
Yeah. And I looked at him in that moment and I was like, you know what, fuck it. Just give you a 4-part disclosure piece. And so I said to him, I'm only attracted to men who experience pleasure from the pleasuring of the woman. And he was like, let me tell you all the things that I'm going to do to you. And I was like,
oh my God. Keep going. Then
okay.
Today's episode of Sex Talk Radio is sponsored by the HUD app. HUD offers an alternative approach to commitment-free dating and is geared towards supporting women in exploring their sexuality and intimacy in a safe way through conversations around consent, healthy communication, and boundary setting. HUD was the first to roll out safety features like auto blur photos and video chat capabilities. I've been using the app for a little while now, and personally, my favorite feature is the bedroom feature, where I can see a glimpse into somebody's bedroom desires. So for example, it will literally say Thea's bedroom, and then BDSM, bondage, dirty talk, impact play, etc., which makes it that much easier to assess your sexual compatibility with someone. HUD is really future forward in how they're evolving their app, and I'm excited to continue using it for casual dating. Go to hudapp.com/sextalk, that's hudapp.com/SEGGS talk for a week on me. A quick note, the HUD app is available for both iOS and Android and is available to users over 18. If you know me and you watch the podcast, you know that I like watching porn for my self-pleasure rituals. One of my favorite websites to go to is xoafterglow.com. What I have found with mainstream porn is that a lot of it is created for the male gaze. It's a lot about the man's pleasure, and it just doesn't feel super authentic and connected. What I really love about Afterglow is that it is for everyone, and it is founded by a woman. I've actually had the pleasure of working with her here in Austin, and I love their mission. You can also find educational porn on their website called EduPorn, and there is just so much to learn and watch there. So go to xoafterglow.com and use code EXOTHEA. As you guys know, I've been very curious about anal play with my male partners, and I'm really excited to share Butter with you guys. Butter Wellness makes men's sexual health and wellness products, including this perineum massager. This applied on the perineum, which is between the ass and the penis of a man, can create prostate orgasms, which are very, very intense orgasms. In addition to that, this tool can also create extra blood flow that goes to the pelvic region. So if anybody has any issues with ED, this can also support with that. This is not to be inserted. This is for external use only, and you can get 20% off by going to butterwellness.com and use code SEGGS, SEGGS.
And so then every time the cousin would come back, I hadn't done the herpes piece yet.
Oh my God.
I was sitting there. It was so funny because I was about to run a herpes in-person breakthrough workshop in Sydney for women.
Oh, that's so powerful.
And I thought, like, it's almost 11 o'clock. If I'm going to have this guy around, I want him around for at least 3 hours.
She likes a long time, you guys. Oh my God.
Am I going to have enough time to fall asleep so that I can show up to my workshop properly? His cousin goes again, and I turn around and I'm like, well, if you are coming back up to my room, you need to know that I test positive for herpes. You need to know that I test positive for herpes. And he looks at me and he's like, as in HSV2? No, I said, if you're going to come up to my room, you need to know that I test positive for HSV2. And he's like, as in the herpes virus? I was like, yeah. And then he just reverted back to all the dirty things he was going to do to me.
I got chills. We're making progress.
So, you know, they're out there and they exist. And he followed through on all of his words.
Damn.
And more. I was very impressed.
So hot. Let me tell you all the things I'm going to do to you. If you need dirty talk advice, you guys.
Yeah.
Just that. The thing that I've learned about dirty talk is like, because people can get really nervous about it, talk about what you're going to do to someone, list things. And then when you're doing it, talk about what you're doing to them.
Yeah.
I'm fucking your pussy so hard right now. I mean, I don't know. Like it's a good way to get started with dirty talk.
Yeah.
Say what you're doing and going to do to someone.
And practice. Someone told me a story recently of just practicing in voice messages, practicing on dating apps, just learning how to talk dirty so that when it actually came to the woman he wanted to talk dirty to, he knew how to because it wasn't his first rodeo.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What do your clients experience in these in real person breakthrough trainings for herpes? Because that sounds really needed.
Yeah. So I ran it as a collab with a woman called Ellie from Comfortable in My Skin. It was beautiful. And really it's about, you know how I spoke about inner safety, learning how to communicate and feel our safety as I'm communicating, because saying the word herpes can bring up a lot of trigger. Like it used to get stuck in my throat.
Throat chakra.
I couldn't say it. I was disgusted by the word. I was so mad that they called it herpes. I was like, couldn't they call it?
I think we need to rebrand it.
Something other than that.
Yeah.
But then I also think it's great because for as long as it triggers you, there's emotional pain there that you get to work through. For me now, telling you that I have herpes is no different to me telling you that I have 10 fingers and 10 toes. Like that's the energy that it carries.
For people to hear that are more recent on their diagnosis.
Yes. So what we do in those workshops is we look at the limiting beliefs that are attached to it, the trauma that is attached to the shame of the diagnosis. Some people I meet, they're like, oh, I got herpes. It wasn't the most ideal experience. Of course, I was disappointed, moved on with my life because there's no deep-rooted core wound. For others of us who carry a core wound of rejection, me, core wound of abandonment, a lot of my clients, herpes is triggering that. And so we do the work on the core wounding, and then we learn how to somatically hold the conversation in our body. So rather than it being so fearful and fear-based and charged, we practice disclosure conversation. Whatever it is, we'll get the women in the group to identify what their conversation is. For some women, they won't let their partners go down on them. Even though their partner has accepted them, she's fearful of passing it on. But she really wants to receive oral sex because who doesn't? Who wants to live a life without oral sex? So we will practice with her and she'll go around the group. Like we're all working in partners. facing our partner and just communicating like, Thea, I know that you really want to go down on me, but I haven't let you. I'm just so terrified of if I transmit this to you that I just can't lie back and receive. And I know we need to talk about it.
Wow.
And then you'll give her feedback of like, that felt direct, or that felt you were shaking your hands, or your voice was trembling, and she'll practice and practice. And again, when it's not your first rodeo and you're in that practice of that communication, whether it's my 4-part disclosure or you sharing that you come from toys, the more that we practice and feel our power in our body, the more that the next time we do it, we can actually communicate from that power and our own internal authority.
And it's more digestible for the partner. When my disclosure of the toy thing felt like sheepish, then their response was kind of like, well, why do you think that is? Or like their response completely mirrored my disclosure. And now it's very assertive and dominant. And like, this is how I come. Let's do it. And they're like, great, get out your toy.
They're like turned on as it's happening. I mean, my first disclosure, the poor man, it was on his couch in his home, and it was like this 45-minute motivational speech but like trauma, sub story, voice shaking. I felt like I was doing like a bungee jump. It was like, this bad thing happened to me and I have to live with this now. And I'm sorry that I have to disclose it to you, but it's important that you know. And at the end of it, he was like, oh, I thought you were going to tell me something bad.
Like what? Like, what's the bad?
I was like, this is bad. And he's like, babe, it's all good.
This was your first partner after the diagnosis?
My first dating disclosure.
Sure.
Because I lived for years not disclosing. I was mad at men. I felt like men did this to me. The reason I received it was I was in a committed partnership, and my ex would last 2 minutes in bed when we were having sex. So I felt like I couldn't express myself with him. He would roll over in shame. And so I felt very suppressed sexually and frustrated. In the end, I ended up cheating. I cheated on him once with this guy, broke up with him the next day. 3 weeks later, got my first symptom. And so I was mad at the guy who gave it to me, but I was really mad at my ex. And so I went through this whole, I hate men. Men have done this to me. It's their fault. It's because you can't perform in bed. You did this to me. You took my sexuality. You gave me all of this shame. And I had to go through my whole healing journey to fix that. And in that process, for about 4 years, I was partying, taking a load of MDMA and sleeping with unaligned men because I was like, I don't respect you. You don't need to know. And it got to a point where I realized I'm potentially doing this to people, doing the very thing that happened to me. I'm doing it to others, and in my pain, I'm making myself right for it. Like, oh, you haven't disclosed to me. You haven't asked me about my sexual health. I've asked you to put a condom on and you've said no. One guy turned around to me. I remember his name was Jack, and he thought he was just the bee's knees. And I said, will you put a condom on, please? And he goes, babe, I only sleep with models. I was like, bro, as if what herpes virus is selective? Like,
mean?
Not that woman over there. No, that pretty one.
And it's just douchey aside from that.
Oh, just bad. And in my mind, I was like, I fucking hope I give this to you. I was angry. I was really mad. Yeah, I've done a lot of healing to move through that.
Well, I just really admire you for disclosing that, because you don't have to disclose that you didn't disclose to me, to the world. And that's powerful and that's important.
Well, the reason I think it's so important is because it's happening.
Yes.
So people aren't disclosing and we're all walking around pretending like we're not. Lots of people are, and lots of women confide in me that they are. And that's the common conversation. I'm sleeping with unaligned men who are not treating them right because it's not aligned, not a match. They're not dating in alignment with their values and their standards. So then they're experiencing pain on the other side of not disclosing anyway. They're not experiencing fulfilling sexual moments with others. They're not experiencing loving dating,
right? Because
they're like, I don't respect you. I'm not going to tell you. It's not setting anyone up for success.
And then there's probably also deep shame happening after the sexual experience, and they're not present because they're thinking about the disclosure or trying to shove it away.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I appreciate you sharing that.
I'll probably cop some shit for it, but I'm okay. It's the truth. I'm like, the truth is the truth, and there's nothing I can do about it.
The person that's going to give you shit has probably forgotten an STI test.
Yeah.
So, what were we just talking about? I had a thought and then it drifted away. Let's chat a little bit about the clean and dirty terminology, because it wasn't until quite a few months into my like kink journey and exploration of all of this stuff that I was like, oh, I can see why that's harmful, and why people that are a little farther on their STI testing journey or kink and BDSM journey, or like in their field profile might put STI negative or even STI free. I feel like maybe is not quite. I feel like STI negative or positive is the best, but you can speak more to that. But yeah, I'd love your thoughts on those terms.
Well, actually, Courtney Brame taught this to me, and he said we use very violent words when it comes to talking about sexual health, like protection, are you clean? And so
protection.
So
protection.
Okay, like as if you need to protect yourself from me or vice versa.
They're fear-based.
And so I love Courtney's request of can we just call things what they are? Like when instead of are you clean? When was the last time you got a sexual health check?
Yeah.
And what were your results of that? It's very...
Are you positive for STIs?
Are you positive for STIs? Whereas are you clean? Especially if you are a person that does get regular sexual health checks and you know that you are not positive for anything, if you're trying to make sure that the both of you are okay and that person does need to disclose something to you and they're not in the Bek Antonucci moment of disclosure and they're in their new moments of disclosure, which does mean that it's hard. There's a lot of fear attached to that. Maybe rejection exists for them and they're trying to protect themselves from that. As soon as someone says to them, are you clean? That is not going to create an opening for that person to want to lean in and be vulnerable to you.
No, I'm dirty. Like that is a deep thing. That's a deep thing to call yourself.
Yeah.
Dirty.
Yes. And so if you opened up and said something along the lines of what I just said, when was the last time you got tested? And that person could say, well, I do get regular sexual health checks. Me, I got 2 recently and they were both negative, but I do test positive for the herpes virus. That person could literally share that with you. And then in the moment you could respond. But if you're getting to the moment of intimacy and you've thrown, are you clean at them? That person could go into panic and maybe they would disclose, but now that you've said that
I'm clean,
very emotionally violent word to them, they might now not disclose to you and sleep with you anyway.
Yeah.
Because there's not the space of vulnerability.
No. And I think that words are so powerful, and classifying something as clean or dirty because of a virus is obscure, and I think it's a really important shift that I hope to see.
Yeah, and call condoms what they are, condoms, not protection.
Sure. Like, can you put a condom on?
Can you put a condom on?
Yeah.
So that, or barriers, that's what Courtney, another word Courtney used, barriers, versus things being so violent is the word that just keeps coming up. It's just hard knowing that a lot of people are still in their acceptance journey. If we challenge them with hard words, they're probably not going to lean in and tell the truth.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. What does your sex life look like now?
Well, I had an incredible time. I had a really incredible time in Bali. I was reclaiming my wild woman and my sensual expression, exploring. I decided that Perth was kind of like I had an apple on a platter, thinking that was the fruit platter. And then I got to Bali and I realized that there were so many other fruits that were so much more delicious. And I just got to really find what I liked, what I didn't like. I love exploring, not so the experience are always air quotes good, but just to make sure that I don't leave fantasies unmet and unexpressed, and just learning what I like in the face of that, whether it's a kind of man, a type of man, a kind of experience. And it's been really fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm big on people advocating for specific like fantasies and kinks to bring them into reality, because I went to a play party that my friend put on, and it was like before everyone started playing, we had like a consent and disclosure talk actually, which is really great. And then it was like, let's just go around and share our mildest and wildest fantasies is what my friends do. So mildest could be like, I'd really love to leave tonight having gotten a back rub, or wildest, I'd really love to leave tonight having 5 guys come on me, like whatever it is. And even just to get those words out there, and then you're in a room full of, beautiful people that want to play. It's like your wildest fantasies could come true.
Yes.
And especially if you're a woman listening or watching this, like 99% of the time, the guy's going to be like, you want to do what? Let's fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like, so, those little curiosities, or maybe you watched porn recently and you really like the thing. Like, I have gained so much of myself and my power back from like just going after these wild things.
I love it. Men will reflect to me that they say, I love how direct you are because now I know what to give to you.
Yes.
I'm not guessing.
Yes.
Does she like this? Is this her fantasy? Is this too far? Is this too much? Is this not enough? I just know what it is that you want. And that means men instinctually are providers. They want to give us what we want.
They do.
So when we tell them, it's like, here's the instruction manual to this wild thing that is Bek Antonucci, and these are the buttons, and this is how you do it, and this is what you say, and this is the fantasy I have.
Men love a manual.
Yeah.
They're putting together furniture or making it come. Men love specifics.
Yes.
Because otherwise they're just basing it off of what's worked for other women.
Yes.
In the past, or what they see in porn.
Yeah.
And that's not real life. And every woman is literally a different thing when it comes to how we come.
We could use you and I as an example. He could be with you.
Right.
Meet me 3 months later and bring Thea's manual to Beck.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Where's your magic wand?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, I just need a few, whatever it is, a few clit swipes. Is it really easy? It's really easy for you to have clitoral orgasms or G-spot?
Yeah, both.
See, I am jealous.
And cervical orgasms, all three.
Oh my God.
All three. I have to, for internal orgasms to happen, I have to trust that person immensely. Otherwise, I can feel it's there.
Your body kind of
and my body will not release, and that my body needs to relax for it to happen. So I can tell if I have deep trust with someone, otherwise it won't. And I really need to feel his pleasure for my pleasure, or it won't. But if that's there, it will happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time, and I'm still not there yet, making it wrong that my body can't do something that it's supposed to.
Well, who told you it's supposed to do that?
Just society and porn.
Yeah.
and reactions growing up from female friends.
Yes.
Of, kind of like a pity reaction. Right. Of, I'm so sorry, or, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But then I also meet women that are like, I don't know if I've ever had an orgasm. I think I come when I have sex. And I'm like, oh, honey, you would know.
You would know.
And there's a lot more women out there that have never had an orgasm. I gave a woman who came to my 1-year birthday party of the podcast a magic wand because she'd only had one orgasm in her life. This is a mom of 3.
Wow.
But she's single now. Get it, girl. Go get it up. Here's your toy.
Yeah. I guess my questions for women like that is more, if you take a long time or you haven't explored a kind of orgasm that you think that your body could have, but it hasn't happened yet and there's frustration, are you taking your time in the experience? Like women, we're ovens, we take a long time to turn on. Once we're on, a lot of us are on for a long time, but because we're not advocating even for that time to be taken, my ex was like, isn't an hour, like his stamina was great. He's like, surely an hour is good. But I'm like, well, at the 45-minute mark, I'm on. So really an hour is only kind of 15 minutes for me.
Wow.
So that's why it's important that we take our time, because then the 3 hours can be an incredibly pleasurable 3 hours.
Wow.
But I need to know that the person's available for that, because some men, my ex was like, I'm a purpose-driven man, I'm busy. An hour of sex is great. That's more than enough. And so I feel if you haven't given yourself the time to explore what your body actually experiences after the 45-minute mark, maybe you don't even know what your body could do because you haven't given yourself the opportunity to play with that.
Absolutely. And I also should be a bit less dramatic than only with toys. When I lived in Nepal for 3 months, and when I would come down from like where I lived in this hut, I would go get a little apartment, and I forgot my sex toys. I didn't bring them to Asia, and I could make myself come with my hands.
Yes.
But it took a really, really long time. And I only ever had that mental association with being alone and doing it.
Right.
And so whenever a guy would be doing work down there, hands, mouth, whatever, it was that time conversation. And as a person, I'm just impatient.
Yes.
I'm busy.
Yes.
Workaholic.
Yes.
So like, okay, we're having a breakthrough in real time of just creating more spaciousness and patience with myself.
Yes.
And it can be difficult to want to go do the finger thing when I can have the most powerful orgasm every time with a high-powered power tool, basically.
Yeah.
So, but it's not something that I don't want to explore. It's just it's a frequent thing for women is the time conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even for me, learning what my body was capable of in terms of internal orgasms, working with crystal and glass wands.
Yes.
That changed everything for me. It taught me all about the sensitivities inside of me, what spots really like to be pressed on. And that changed. That's when I was like, my body can do this.
There's so much more than we think.
Yes.
Than the clip.
Yeah.
That's the final straw. I will be getting a wand. I've had so many friends in Austin tell me.
Well, I mean, you have Rosie's splash blankets.
Yes.
I love Rosie's wands.
Yes.
And so they just do it for me. They get all the way up in there in all the right spots.
Yes. I'll order some from her. Because, and that's what my friend has said who's been trying to get me to use one, is it's not about the intense clitoral orgasm. It's about literally just exploring our bodies because there's also so much shame growing up of like looking at our pussies and like exploring them. Yes. Whereas I think guys just like look at their dicks all day.
Well, even I was telling you in a prior conversation, I had I had a health scare in Bali about 2 weeks before I left. I found a lump and it was scary. It was so scary because I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know if it was cancer, a cyst, a sexual health condition that I didn't know about. The medical over in Indonesia is really poor. So I was paying for tests and not getting any reassurance back. The final straw for me is I got an email from them saying you do not have herpes. Like all my tests were coming back negative. And then they sent me an email.
Like I do.
And I was like, $1,500 for these people to tell me that I don't have herpes. I'm gone home.
Yeah. And, oh, wow. That's why you went home?
But I haven't taken this shot before.
To understand, yeah.
And one of my girlfriends is a vulva photographer.
Wow.
So she had a wide-legged, open, spread leg photo of me. And I messaged her saying, babe, I am panicking in Bali. I don't know what's going on. Can you find that photo of me? I need to see a before and after.
Wow.
Because it was an infected hair follicle, so it was inflamed. It was starting
to like
so it lumped.
Bulge.
And then I think through all of my stress, I gave myself a herpes outbreak on it. So I was like, this is some kind of sexual health condition I've never seen. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. It didn't hurt. It just visually didn't look nice.
Sure. And you're in the limbo emotionally.
I had all of America planned. I had, you know what it's like to have podcast studios booked out, guests booked. It was a very expensive ordeal. Yes. And all of a sudden I'm panicking.
Wow.
And so after the antibiotics kicked in, went back to normal. But I did realize I haven't looked at my pussy enough to know, unless I was taking a sexy shot for someone, I didn't know what normal was.
What she's supposed to look
like. And so I really am such a big advocate now for take photos from all angles so that you know what's going on and what kind of your homeostasis is.
Yeah. Did finding that bring up any old trauma or emotions around the unknown of your herpes virus when you got it?
So it was actually a really powerful experience for me because I forgot what it was like for me emotionally 10 years ago. Like I know, but the feeling was very different. But my experience this time was I just went straight to self-love of no matter what this is, Rebecca, I love you and we're going to be okay. I won't leave you in this experience.
You won't leave yourself?
Won't leave myself.
That's beautiful.
Because prior I abandoned, like just left myself, spent my life improving. If I have the hot body, if I get the hot boyfriend, if I make enough money, then I'll be good enough. I was like, no matter what happens, you're safe, you're okay, and I love you. Like no, and you will be loved with this, whatever it is. Number 2, I got support. So my best girlfriend and my coach, my mentor, I went to both of them and said, this is what's happening for me right now. I'm experiencing a lot of fear. I'm afraid. And I need to share with you what's going on. Yeah. And so then my next part was, okay, well now I need information. And that's what was the most dysregulating part of it. I knew emotionally I can support myself. Yeah. Emotionally I can support myself no matter what this is. If it's some sexual health experience, I had a great time in Bali. I communicated about my sexual health.
You felt good about you.
I didn't abandon. I didn't not use condoms when I wanted to. There was nothing for me to be upset or mad about. I was aligned with all of my choices. I was just in this experience that I would have preferred not to be in, but that was what was presenting. And what was most dysregulating was the lack of information being provided to me. So that's when I knew, okay, to feel resourced here, I just have to go home to Perth, go to a doctor that I know and trust, and receive from them the information that I'll believe to be true.
Yeah.
And then be able to go to America with peace in my mind. So it turns out after that entire experience, the original doctor was right. Even though I do have herpes, I got an email from the Perth doctor being like negative. And then I get another email saying you have herpes. And I call my best friend. I'm like, I've never been so excited to receive an email to let me know that I have herpes. And
Just herpes, honey.
And even the doctor, she's like,
scary.
do you think you overreacted? I was like, no, look, I'd take it. She asked me, did I think that I overreacted?
Oh,
but I showed her, I took like 1,000 photos. I was like, look at the first one. And she goes, oh, okay, I get with the inflammation why you kind of went straight to thinking that it was something that wasn't. Health is my number one value. So I just needed to make sure that I was okay. And once I knew that I was, then I was fine.
Yeah. Could I ask you for some coaching on health?
I'd love to, yeah.
Just be vulnerable with
Let's
people.
go.
I really struggle with discipline around food and movement.
Yeah.
And I find that I get really good at something for like a week.
Yes.
And then it's the dopamine's gone, the instant results aren't there, and
Yeah.
it fades away. And then I go into shame and beating myself up of like, you can't stick with stuff, you're gaining weight, all of these things. And I have a big transition coming up. I'm actually leaving my day job.
Amazing.
And I'm very excited. And also there's no longer the excuse of busy.
Yes.
But you're just such a wise woman. And I feel like you might have some good juju for me.
So why would you want to be consistent?
Because I have seen direct results that are profound, even in a week or two. I was really struggling with some digestive issues and constipation, and I did like 2 weeks of this delivery service of plant-based. It was delicious, and I felt like I was like manic or something. I was so happy and energized. I was like, "What's going on?
Welcome to my life."
Did my meds change? And it was the food, because we are what we eat.
Yes.
And so I get these little glimpses, but I have a very addictive personality. I'm sober from alcohol, and it's just easy for me to go back to the homeostasis, which for me is providing relief and nurturing myself through like sweets and indulgences. But
what's it costing you to live like this?
A lot of self-love.
Yeah.
And I mean being really mean to myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
But when I look back at the last few years, I tell myself a story that I've never stuck with anything when it comes to food and health and movement.
When it comes, that's the asterisk of when it comes to food and health, because I'm curious, did Sex Talk Radio get instant results in 1 or 2 weeks?
No.
And so where would your podcast be right now if you took that same mentality to your podcast? Wouldn't be here.
I find I have to gamify things for them to work.
Yes.
To unhack my own brain.
What does that mean?
Like, I think that there's enough like dopamine released with, a new episode of the podcast. I wonder how these clips are going to do to kind of be hooked.
Yeah.
Like make it a healthy addiction in a way. And so finding little strategies to get hooked on things. But yeah, I feel like it's costing me a lot right now. In fact, I've actually like really stopped being super sexual the last few weeks.
It sounds like it's deeply attached to your self-love.
Definitely.
And that's the work, that's the healing.
Yeah.
And if there's podcasts are a dopamine release, because mine comes Monday 5 a.m. Every Monday 5 a.m. new episode, which means every Monday loads of people DMing saying this is what I got from it. Dopamine.
Yes.
New reels, you do 15 to 20 per episode. Dopamine.
Yeah.
That can only last so long.
Right.
So maybe there's going to be
about passion. So for me, now that I've hit this plateau, like I was 100K followers was the big thing. And now that I'm there's less of that energy, but I'm so passionate about the podcast that it's going to self-perpetuate.
Yes.
And so it's finding, I think, passion in movement and
or passion in the love for yourself that would have you do the thing consistently.
Yeah.
You don't need to work out 7 times if my personality had it her way, she'd be doing a boxing class every day and a yoga and
I love that. I need a little bit of that.
But I just have a baseline. Yeah. It's like 4 times a week, 50 minutes. That is the baseline. Anything more than that, great.
Yeah.
I love to feel pleasure when I'm eating my food, and I don't force myself to eat anything that I don't like. I love food. I love to enjoy my food. I don't like to be overly full. I set baseline standards that feel good for me, that aren't dream standards, fantasy standards. That's where most women also ruin their ability to create whatever result it is for their life, because it's like, imagine if you'd said 500,000 followers for Sex Talk Radio in a year.
Yeah.
Well, then 100,000 isn't good enough.
If there's always another result to achieve or physical
or
change.
If you just made it so extreme that it's almost a bar. Like, great to have high bars set, but if we do that consistently, we're constantly coming from, well, there goes Beck, never doing what she says, never achieving enough.
That mean voice.
When ultimately you and I are achieving a lot. So there's an opportunity here for deeper appreciation of you for what already exists. And I feel like you're being invited into a deep self-love journey. And then the third part is baseline standards that you're willing, like they get to be achievable over. People forget about the value of compound interest. If you want your dream healthy body so you can reclaim your sex, and
I do.
You do, but in 4 weeks, probably not going to happen, babe. Got to be really honest with you.
I know. I had a personal trainer for 6 months, and at 6 months I was like, we're kind of moving slow here. Like, it's a fucking process.
Yeah. I mean, the most beautiful thing I learned through a 10-year eating disorder was I wanted results fast. Yeah. And anytime I went for fast results, I'd end up 10 steps behind. And so with my business right now, she's doing beautifully. I love my business. I'd love her to be go faster, but I will not take that mentality to her, because I know, whether it's business, podcast, or my body, trying to go fast, I'll end up 10 steps behind.
Damn.
And maybe that's your lesson as well, to practice.
Yeah, because we're fast.
Yeah.
We're fast gals. We've got vision.
And how long has the main voice existed within you?
Oh, gosh. Childhood, since childhood, yeah.
So I think if that voice has been there since childhood, 6 months with a personal trainer is going to move your body in the right direction, but you're doing deep work to shift those thoughts.
Yeah.
Because if you loved yourself exactly as you are right now, the subtle changes in your body, you would be like, I look amazing. I'm so proud of myself for doing this consistently. I follow through on my word to myself. Look at what I do. No wonder my podcast is blowing up. Look at the community I'm creating.
I'm glad I asked you.
Yeah.
You're very wise. You're very
asking.
wise and powerful. Yeah. And I mean, I think what you just gave me too is so applicable for a woman that's diagnosed recently with any STI.
Yes.
Is that as you go through this journey, it's not about the virus.
No. I mean, for me, it was, like I said, learning that the first outbreak was the worst and it didn't come back. And the thought was still in my mind like a siren all day. It was like here, so loud, even though no one else could hear it. It's like, you have herpes. No one will love you. You have herpes. The whole world will reject you. Your family will be embarrassed of you. You've ruined your life. You've ruined your sex life. You're reckless, Rebecca. You don't think about the consequences of your actions. And it was just constant that I had this moment of, it's just not my body and it's just not herpes. It's this that I have to do the work.
The siren.
On. Yes. And from the point at which I started to unpack that and get the siren, to begin with, I just needed the siren to go from 100% to 90. I wanted it gone. Like, you want the dream body? I wanted the siren gone. But I just needed it to quiet a little bit.
What I actually want is, the siren of when I look at myself in the mirror.
Yes. Yeah. But I believe that we don't see ourselves through the reflection in the mirror. I believe we see ourselves through the lens of our thoughts. Ooh. So I had a 10-year eating disorder. So I know you guys work in pounds. I was 15 kilograms lighter than what I am now, which is a tiny,
you're tiny,
rake framed woman. And I used to look in the mirror and look at and I'd pinch every part of me, and I'd be like, "You're fat. You're fat. You're disgusting." All the I was bullied in school, and they used to call me disgusting. And I would pick. I had abs. I had this little 6-pack, and I'd be like, "No, too much there.
Wow,
you're fat," constantly, all day long. And so again, it wasn't the body, because the body was actually undernourished. It was the thought of, you'll be fat, and if you're fat, people won't love you. And if you're fat, people won't accept you. And just mean to myself. It took so long to stop calling myself that word. And I had to reframe it and find new way to see myself through a different lens. I'm sure there's a past version of me that's like, You happy like that? And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm really happy like this. And it's still a journey of self-acceptance too, because I feel there's so much pressure for women to look a certain way, appear a certain way. What will make us worthy and good enough for love and for a man to choose us? That lives in our DNA, in our programming.
Yeah. And the societal positioning of there's always more to be done, to be improved. I mean, I've had lip fillers and jawline filler, and it's like you do the one thing that you've been saving up for, excited about, and then it's what's the next thing, And I see that, and that's really powerful. What you see in the mirror is how your thoughts see you.
Yes.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Time to go do some mirror work, baby.
Do it.
Are you going to see Matt Rife tomorrow?
No, I'm not.
Oh, I thought it happened.
No.
Oh.
No, I just decided I didn't want to get on another plane, but now I've also decided I'm not leaving in America. So I'm like.
Not decided you're living in America?
No, I've decided I'm not leaving America.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
But did the connection happen?
No.
I thought I saw DMs. Oh, okay.
Everyone was
I dreamt it
him.
for you. I dreamt it for you.
Everyone was manifesting Matt Rife for me, but no, it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm assuming you've been on a lot of planes if Bali's happened 65 times.
I cannot be bothered getting on another. I've gone Bali, Perth, Broome, Bali, Melbourne, LA, Austin. I'm like, I'm done. Leave me here.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm only just getting my sleeping back, and it's a week and a half.
I'm sure.
In. Jet lag because we're flipped. I've had nights of 1 hour sleep, so I'm like, I'm not ruining sleep cycle now. I'm back. I'm falling asleep at 11 p.m. I'm done.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. No, what was there?
I would love for you to give some advice as somebody that has done a lot of the fucking work over the last 10 years around HSV2.
Yeah.
What would you share, with somebody that's recently diagnosed? Because I think them just hearing that it gets better is important.
Yeah, it gets so much better. For me, it gave me permission to reclaim my sexuality and experience things that a sheltered version of me would have never allowed myself to. It's taught me the power of vulnerable conversations create deeper, more meaningful
and great sex, you
sexual
guys.
Relations.
Yeah.
Great sex. Better. Like, I'm having the best sex of my life right now. And with a herpes disclosure at the very beginning or not, because we've already spoken about it in advance.
Yeah.
And just people are just so open to the conversation. And for me, it just puts me so in my power to know that I back myself so fully that I'm so willing to communicate all parts of me, knowing that I choose me and this person doesn't have to. And I'm giving them, a lot of us will put our hand up and say, I wasn't given the choice to choose. And I do believe the choice to choose changes everything. A lot of women and men have so much fear around, well, what if I pass it on?
Right.
But if I fear passing it on to you, I'm literally looking at you through the lens of a victim. Like, I'm doing this really bad thing to you. But when I'm giving you the choice to choose, you're this empowered person that's like, hey, thanks so much for sharing this information with me.
Right.
Now what do I want to do with it? You can ask questions, you can have a dialogue and actually make sure that it still feels good for you. But it feels really powerful.
Definitely.
And for anyone going through a lot of pain, it's just the deepest self-love journey that you'll ever go on. And we're all in it in our own capacities to different degrees, whether it's sexual health, body image, how much money you have in the bank, how big or not your dick is. We all have a self-love journey. I think that's a part of life.
Absolutely.
But the sex that I thought that I was robbed from and the kind of man that I thought would accept me with this, those limitations, like the only limitations herpes will ever put on you are the ones that you think herpes are putting on you. People are like, oh, what can I do and not do? What can I do and not do with herpes? You can do whatever you want. There is not one limitation except for the limitations you choose.
Wow. Powerful. Were you the one sharing with me that part of the reason they don't always test for herpes is because they know the stigma is going to have a more
So they say that
detrimental
it's
effect.
More detrimental for you to know than for you to not know.
That is wild. That should mean something.
Well, it's just like the doctor.
I mean, we want people to know. We want the people to know if they have it. And also the stigma and the shame is, so much bigger than the symptoms.
Yeah, look, I have I definitely have a bee in my bonnet around the medical profession when it comes to the herpes virus, from the misinformation that's spread to the you cannot transmit unless you have an outbreak, to not testing for it, to, you know, even this conversation around, well, there can be false negatives and false positives, and just like my health scare story that I told you, the lack of information is what can cause so much stress.
Yes.
And then I was very fortunate. I had such a sweet doctor, this like little lady that was like, oh, honey, you have herpes. Whereas a lot of women have shared with me they felt
traumatic
very shamed
experiences
by their doctor.
Yes.
Incredibly shamed. And so that's added to the pain of their experience.
Right.
So, and the other thing is doctors are not saying, okay, physically, you're going to be able to manage this. The first outbreak is the worst outbreak. I wasn't told that. But then they're also not telling you actually psychologically this could potentially have a huge impact on you.
Sure.
And what's most important is that you go and get yourself supported from here. This is where you could go. These are the different not-for-profit psychologists, life coaches, sexual health advocates.
Right.
There isn't that conversation.
Right.
So you're just walking out of this doctor's office.
Like hope you figure it out yourself.
Hope you figure it out. Go jump on Dr. Google. And
Right.
interesting statistic, there is this doctor, his PhD doctor who did some kind of data collection analysis of a Google word search. And when people are putting suicide into Google, the next two searches is number 1, depression, and number 2, herpes.
Whoa.
I experienced suicide ideation after my herpes diagnosis. So that doesn't come as a shock to me. And I really believe that there would be suicide statistics attached to it. We just would never know.
Right.
So it's pretty big time that the medical profession is not doing more and is kind of remaining ignorant of like, it's probably better you don't know, you know. We don't want you to do anything stupid, so let's just keep passing it and not have conversations about it.
Right. What you said was so important, like, and that's the big disconnect with like Western medicine is it's life-saving and so important. And there's no like empathy or human like connection in these experiences. It's very sterile.
Yes.
And the woman I had on who has HIV, she had a horribly traumatic experience of being told about it with misinformation and shamed. And it's doctors should absolutely be trained on doing exactly what you just said. Here's some resources. This is going to be really hard. Yeah. This can be really hard from a mental health perspective. Here's what to expect. Here are resources. And that's just not a part of our going to see the doctor.
Yeah. And a lot of places that my clients have claimed their power back, and women that have shared with me online, you know how you're talking about your play party?
Yeah.
And you had the fantasy and the disclosure piece. Mm-hmm. They have been at play parties and the disclosure conversation has come up.
Right.
And that's been the moment where they've been like.
And people still want to play with them.
Do I say the thing?
Right.
And they felt, clients will say to me, they ask themselves, what would Beck do?
Oh,
and so then they're in this play party and they share.
Yeah.
And everyone, because they're so open and open-minded, there isn't even an acknowledgement of like, oh, you're so brave. It's just like, great, I'm glad that I know that. Mm-hmm. And then they have the play party as normal.
Yes.
And so that's been such a permission piece for a lot of people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Fun. Wow. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I've learned a lot from you.
I'm so glad.
I feel inspired from my self-love journey.
Yeah. I'm always here.
And I really appreciate the work you're doing and everything you vulnerably shared today. And I just think you are changing a lot of women's lives and people's lives. Do you have resources for men as well?
I have a few podcast episodes with men who test positive for herpes so that men feel like they're really spoken for.
Great.
A lot of I don't class myself as an advocate, but a lot of the people who do, they're predominantly female.
Sure. I love that you have that
So when I find an amazing man, I love to get him and squeeze all the juice out of him.
Absolutely. What is your handle and your website?
Handle is at Bek Antonucci, and website I don't even use.
Okay.
So,
slide into her DMs.
Slide into DMs. That's where I am.
I love that.
Instagram or podcast is where I live.
And the name of the podcast again?
Raw, Real, and Vulnerable.
Beautiful. Go find her, friends.
Let's go.
Yay.
Thank you so much.